Hey, what's up? So today I am celebrating my 10-year anniversary of being vegan, and it's a big thing. I will do my best to, I'm going to share my story and like some thoughts that I have about it for sure, but it's all going to be very positive. It's not going to be negative or saying harsh things, because this is veganism is an expression of love. It's not about anger and frustration and judging others for not having come to the same conclusions that I have. It's a personal journey that I've been on for 10 years. So the reason I know that it's 10 years is because my wife walked out on me in September of 2013, and I made a CD back in the day that had some tunes on it, and it was called The Long September of 2013. And I don't have it anymore, but it always stuck in my mind as how I really remember the month that it happened, because it was quite a life-changing event. I was married forever, and it forever apparently only meant 4 years. So we walked a path and that ended. But as soon as it did, when that was over, I found myself on my own. I immediately chose to embrace a vegan diet at the time, because at that time, that's what it was. It was a diet. Philosophy, but it was like, okay, I only really ate, we were vegetarians, but then it was like, I was only eating cheese and that kind of stuff, eggs, because it was things that we ate. We would make omelets and quesadillas and stuff like that. So it was a thing in that sense. But as soon as I was on my own, I would say, what was my saying? It was, eat your partner's diet at your own peril. It's a funny thing being in a relationship where you eat meals together, where you share food and cater to each other's tastes, and you can eat things and that's your norm and whatnot. But yeah, I started a new norm at that point. I'd been a vegetarian already for 5 years, because when I was in my early 20s, I went on a big trip around the world, and I was in Thailand. I just flew into Bangkok, and coming from India, it was quite a culture shock. And there was, I rode the bus in to Khao San Road in Bangkok, and there was one of the guys on the bus that was on the plane. He was a yogi, with the blazing orange robes and whatnot. And so I didn't understand, I probably thought the guy was Buddhist or something like that, I arrived there, and he's like, hey, do you want to share a room at a hospital? It's cheaper to share one, to get a double room or whatever. I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And it turned out that this guy was a yogi, and he had these little books about yogas. It was probably the first time I heard the word yoga. So I didn't know anything about this, and he was like, oh, hey, I would go out, and I was a young man, and I was doing my thing, and, I'd come back, and I'd have these, chicken skewers, and, I'm eating my pad thais and this thing, filling my boots. You're in Bangkok, right? And, I remember, I'd come back, I was eating these things, and I didn't know anything about yogis and what they were about. And he's like, why do you eat that stuff? I was like, well, because your body needs it. And he's like, are you sure? And I was like, well, no, I suppose I'm not at all. And he's like, oh, you should look into it, and he was really polite. He didn't push it at all. He didn't even mention the word vegan or vegetarian. He just said, think about the things that you're doing. And and then also with onions too, he's like, why do you eat those things? I was like, well, because they're good for you. He's like, are you sure? Look into it. eventually I did, and I tried stop eating them, and I noticed that at least with the onions, I didn't need them in my diet, and I could see the point that he was making by the research that I was doing about them. So I stopped eating those for the most part, and I still abstain quite a bit to this very day. Like, I don't eat a lot of certainly raw onions, and I don't buy onions. I will eat them from time to time and in certain dishes, but that's it. And but then, so that was me starting to become like a vegetarian. But I was always a vegan. I'd say I was born a vegan, because like when I was young, I remember one time I was with my dad and my sister, and we made a banana con leche. It's like a milkshake, sort of like, but Mexican style, and with bananas and ice and cinnamon, super good. And like the spoon, he was like smashing the stuff in the blender with the spoon, and the spoon got broken. And I was really upset when it happened, because I don't know, I guess I just care about certain things, and I was hurt that something had happened to this spoon, right? So like, I've always been a caring person, and like, I remember when I was like pretty young, elementary school, I went to a friend's house, and we were sitting there, and he had a pellet gun, and we were shooting at some birds and things like that, and before I knew what happened, I had shot a bird, and I just crumbled. I was like, I just instinctively knew that what I had done was wrong, and that I should not do things like that ever again. And so I tried to cremate this bird, but because being a silly child, I stuck the bird. I was like, okay, and like, we'll burn it, cremate it, right? But all we had was diesel, so I had this little can of diesel, stuck the bird in it, and then tried to light it. Of course, that's not, it didn't do anything. It just like lightly smoldered, and yeah. But that was the experience, of certainly recognizing something about the value of life, and about taking lives, and about causing harm and suffering and animals and stuff like that. So then, yeah, I mean, and then like fast forward, like my wife was gone, and then I was dealing with some health issues, and then it was like I became a raw vegan. I thought that would help fix the stuff. I tried so many things. My back was hurting. I had squished a disc because I used to be a rod buster, and like I was, and my knees, and it's just like my health was failing. It's like, what am I doing wrong? I was eating a raw vegan diet, and it's just like, I didn't get it. And then and I'd even done cleansing, and I was, I'd done a bunch of like coffee enemas, all these different protocols and things like that, trying to get my health back. And then that's when I stumbled across fruit, and I started eating fruit, and my vitality returned to me. And then I've been a fruitarian ever since, because I was sitting there eating a piece of broccoli, and I was like, oh, where's my body run off of anyways? And it ain't broccoli, because it's like carbs and protein and stuff like that. So that was when I did change my diet to that, and I've been on that path ever since. I mean, I will say it hasn't always been the easiest. I remember like having to explain myself to family members, and that being laughed at, being scoffed at, being made fun of, even by family, like my cousin's children. I remember being laughed at by them about I was into sun gazing at the time, so they're like, oh yeah, you're just gonna like stare at the sun and breathe air, and you're not gonna eat this, and you're gonna die. And like being laughed at by children, there's nothing you can do about that. You just kind of have to swallow it. But it really humbled me for the years to come, and like I certainly started taking veganism a lot more seriously. Like in the beginning, I just wouldn't eat it, but here and there, you would eat some meat and stuff like that, or fish or whatever. But then I noticed that anytime that I would eat cheese, it would have a negative impact on my complexion. It would come out my skin in zits and stuff, whiteheads and like that. And I was like, and in the back of my neck and things like that. And I was like, just that alone, it's not worth it. I am not interested in having acne and things like that if I can prevent it. And you can't, I could, by not eating animal, secretions and stuff like that. So that was a big thing. And, eating eggs and stuff like that was just, I couldn't live with how the animals are held against their will. And like, I even had a job when I was working at this lodge, and I had to collect the eggs. It's like, they don't want you to take their eggs, and you have to move them. And it's just like, well, it's just not right. It's like, how can you treat another animal in a way that is different to how you would like to be treated? How can you push somebody around? How can you control their behaviors? How can you think that you're better than them? Because I tell you, when people treat me like that, where I'm at right now, it doesn't faze me, because I'm just not at a place where I allow the way that others behave to dictate the way that how I compose myself. But yeah, really tough, seeing other animals be thought of as less and treated as less. And it's a funny scenario how they just like lay an egg a day but it's like, in nature, would that happen? I don't think so. It's because you take the eggs. That's why they do it. So it's like, no matter how you look at that whole scenario with eggs and with people, and like the stuff that they feed them is not their ideal diet. I mean, they like to eat just as well as we do, fresh organic fruits and vegetables and herbs and seeds and whatever they can get their hands on, right? Or beaks, little feet, right, and everything. So yeah, really, really hard seeing animals suffer and stuff like that. And I used to suffer. So like veganism, I would suffer along with the animals. Like I say, veganism isn't a diet. Sure, it is associated with a diet, but it's not a diet. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life. It's a lifestyle. It's a mentality. And it's like veganism is a civil rights movement, because it's about animal rights. It's not about eating food. It's that animals have rights. They have a right to raise their families free from oppression, free from being controlled, dominated, free from having some entity dictate every aspect of their existence, to the point where they just have an existence for as long as it's allowed, and then they're snuffed out, and then they're either fed to animals. They go, like in chicken barns and stuff, they have a certain lifespan, and then they take their children. It's like, for milk to exist, you have to imprison an animal in a facility, and then a female, and then they have to rape her. They have to inseminate her with the sperm of another animal. And then once she has that baby, then because the only way milk comes is from a lactating animal, then they take that baby. So then child abduction. And then sometimes, maybe that's for veal. So then they kill her child, and then take all of her milk, and then repeat the process until she's too old to produce anymore. And then they send her off to a slaughterhouse to be dog food. It's like, boy, can I ever not live with that on my conscience, And so, yeah, I've been vegan for 10 years now. And, you know, one of these things is like people be like, oh, I was vegan for a couple years. I was like, and then no, I'm not. It's like, well, then you never were. Because it's not something that you just kind of flip-flop on. Because like I said, it's a civil rights movement. It's just like how, it's like, I don't need anybody else to spell it out to me about why, say, African American people, black people have rights, black people have rights, why gay people should have rights, right? They can do, you know, as long as you're not harming anybody else in with what you're doing, you should be able to have all of the same rights that everybody else does. Same with women. You know, and I don't need to be gay, I don't need to be black, I don't need to be a woman to know that animals deserve the exact same freedoms and liberties that we cherish so much and would get so bent out of shape for if anybody was, you know, whenever anybody's impinging on those things, when you have your rights and freedoms taken away, people just lose it. You know, like imagine being locked up in a pen your whole life, or you know how like people, something I'm really not fond of is animal ownership, and I will make a video about this specifically, but it's just like, you know, like say cats, okay, kitty, so if you have that cat inside, then and that's all that it knows, then it's afraid to go outside, so you can trap it inside, and then you can have this pet that's yours. You have to kill other animals so that you can feed it food, because it needs protein, because it is a carnivore. If you let it outside, cats are an invasive species in North America. They're responsible for over 1 million bird deaths in the United States alone. So it's just like the scenario that it causes, because there are these animals that live under the protection of us humans. And so we create this scenario where you have to kill all of these animals so that you can have this little animal that you can trap. You know how cats too, they see themselves as our equals. And so if you lock a cat up and you don't treat it, if like they can tell if you think that they're lesser than you, so it's essentially abuse, emotional abuse. One form of emotional abuse, and if they get a chance to, they will run away because they're just not putting up with that. Dog, a bit of a different story, because they're like more of an expression of unconditional love, and like a dog will, you know, you can beat a dog and it will turn the other cheek, it will still show you love, but it's just sick too. You know, like I see so many people with their animals and how much time they spend yelling at their animals. Come, do this, do that, you know, do this, behave in this way, go fetch the stick, do this, do that now, you know, and it's just, it's ridiculous. Just people like, I mean, each to their own, I guess, right? I mean, but you know, one that's really upsetting is people who have guide dogs. So it's like somebody who has some kind of a physical handicap where they then require an animal, or they don't require, but then they rely on an animal for some form of guidance, for walking dogs. So then, you know what they do? They abduct those animals from their mothers. People, I remember, there was a woman when I was down in the States recently, and she's like, oh yeah, I was thinking about getting a puppy. I was like, you know where a puppy belongs? It's with its mother, not with you. How can you live with yourself when you just abduct an animal from its mother, and then you take it and raise it in your own image so that it doesn't know any better, it doesn't know anything else, and so then you just have this little slave. And if they think too much for themselves, if they're too independent, then those are no good ones. So then they essentially weed out the ones that are too independent, and then they take the ones that are more docile and controllable and enter them into a life of servitude. And you know, it's like, yeah, sure, people, some people are able to live a bit of a more free existence because they have this animal, but it's like you can't put your needs in that way onto another animal. If there are people who have issues, handicaps, that's a human problem. You cannot impose that on other animals and be like, okay, well, you know, now my pain is your pain. It doesn't work. So yeah, I mean, like, yeah, veganism. You know, I have a t-shirt, my t-shirt says, "Until every cage is empty." Because it's heartbreaking to see, you know, one of the hardest things for me was like, you know, like my own personal hell would be going to a barbecue, not because there's dead animals but being cooked there, but just because of the looks on people's faces as they would sit there and eat meat, because they were enjoying it and not caring, like just openly, you know. For myself, it's just like, that's to derive pleasure from the suffering of another being. In German it's called Schadenfreude, because those animals suffer, and so if you're sitting there eating it and you're enjoying it, that's Schadenfreude. But in English we just use the word sadistic to enjoy the suffering of another, because you can't have that. You can't have, you know, if you're an animal lover, then you don't seek to control animals. You don't seek to own, like, you can't own me. You can't control me. And if there is a scenario where there's an animal where you're able to have that kind of a relationship so that you can dominate them and whatnot, I mean, then, oh, shame on you. I mean, like, and it's not, I guess it's not about feeling bad about what's happened, right? I mean, this happened and we never knew any better. I've had a number of cats, and I've never had a dog, but, you know, like, I'd say it's not about feeling bad about what's happened, but it's about taking what we've learned and moving on, and it's got to stop. I mean, it will. Is it going to stop anytime soon? I don't think so. But the point is raising awareness about it and talking about it openly. And yeah, you know, like, even in the Bible it says, and God gave man dominion over the other animals. Dominion doesn't mean dominate. It means that we are the most advanced species on this planet. We are the ones who are building nuclear bombs and rocket ships and, you know, working along those kinds of lines, in that way. I'm not saying that there aren't other beings that are advanced in other ways. But, you know, as you know, humans, we have sort of a stranglehold. I'm not saying that we control everything. As far as I know, it is actually the plants that control the planet to a large degree, because of how vast their network is and how they're tapped in with the water and how it all affects things like that. So it's like, but for what it's worth, you know, we are this species which, it's like, it's our duty. We are like stewards of this land. We're supposed to be taking care of these animals. We're supposed to be watching out for them. We're the ones. And so that's like what veganism is. It's like, it's a civil rights movement that exists amongst humans for animals, because it's like, they do not have the capacity to protect themselves against us. We have too much technology, and there's so many of us that they just cannot fight us off, right? So that's why veganism is people that, you know, at least for myself, it's not a diet. It's something where it's like if not us, then who? You know, eventually people have to say, no, this isn't right. We have to do something about it. And it's not enough to just stand there and be like, okay, well, I'm just not going to participate. I'm not going to be involved in it. You actually have to actively do something about it, to raise awareness of it. And in a negative way, because trying to make people feel guilty about the things that they do. Like anybody, everybody, I would think they instinctively move away from negativity. So if you're coming at it from that kind of a standpoint where you are like shaming people and really coming down on people, making people feel bad. I mean, that's one approach, but it's not the one that I like to use. I mean, it's more about showing it's about love. It's about love for animals and recognizing them as equals in this thing that we're doing. The sun is just starting to come down on me here. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. I can say that I haven't always, it took so many years. It wasn't easy, just because you see everybody eating those things. And, there was a time when I would, you still crave it because you smell it and you know what it tastes like. It's like, I know what KFC tastes like. Of course I do. I've eaten it many times. Even like when I would go traveling, sometimes I would buy like a piece of chicken and then I would just eat the skin and then throw away the chicken just so that I could have that taste, because I couldn't eat the flesh because it would just gross me out, this idea that I was eating a piece of flesh. But, there's been times when I was like struggling with my health and I was sick, and I was like, you hear these things, people are like, oh, you got to eat this and that. And I was like, well, you think, oh, well, there's something magical in eggs or something like that. So I'd buy a dozen eggs, and it's like, I've never noticed any difference eating any of those things. And so, but then eventually I just completely lost all taste for it. And it's not like, because that's what people say. It's like, oh, I could never do that. It's too hard. And it's like, well, it's not hard when you think about what the alternative is. I mean, which is being involved in a scenario which causes a lot of suffering. Like, do I sleep better at night? I don't know. I don't have a comparison, but I tell you, with where I'm at, I couldn't sleep at night if I just couldn't. And I know it's not like that for everybody. I grew up a hunting family. My dad would hunt, and he eats meat with every meal, and he doesn't feel that way. And I'm not saying that anybody else should feel this way either. I'm just sharing how I feel, the journey that I've been on with it, what I've been through. Certainly went through an angry phase, and shoving it in people's faces, and like putting on game changers every chance that I would get, and arguing with people, and like really struggling at barbecues, just because seeing people enjoying this thing, and like just as if it's like, because to me it's like murder and whatnot. So it's just like, how can you, right? But since coming back from Mexico, I've seemed to be more peaceful and more inclusive, and not so judgmental, and not so angry, I guess, about it all, because it's hard when, if you see somebody suffering, and it's like, I can't be a part of that. And I couldn't go to barbecues and things like that just because, like, yeah, that's how I lost my last job, was because I went to a festival. I was working at this lodge, and I came back, and it's a fishing lodge. It's a weird place for me, but I thought it would, I would take care of the animals they had there on the hobby farm. And my boss said to me, he's like, oh, hey, because they're building a pig pit for having pig roast. And he's like, oh, hey, you mixed the pig roast. You must be upset. And I was like, man, do you not know anything about me? Like, have you not been paying attention any time that I've ever opened my mouth about the things that are important to me and what I'm all about? I was like, are you kidding me? And that I didn't say anything really bad, but I tell you, it was enough to see me packing up my things the next day and moving on. And then, yeah, that was the beginning of my trip down to Mexico and whatnot. But yeah, it's tricky, there's phases of it all, and it's you're just like this phase that we're in right now. It's like veganism is gaining more and more, I don't know if traction is the word, but it's all over the place. People think about it, and certainly if you see videos about like a mother chasing her calf, or about some of the things that happens in the places where animals are kept, or just like you see the impact that it has, and if you learn more about diet and this and that, I mean, there's two sides to every story, right? There are people who will say this and that, and people have their convincing arguments, but it's up to you at the end of the day to make your mind up about what feels right for you, what you're ready to live with and be involved with and to participate in. Because if you're buying that stuff, that's you're playing a part in it. I mean, you're just as liable for it. It's guilty by association is a thing. So and that was a big thing for me. It was just like, oh, well, the only way, I remember in the beginning, it was like, okay, well, I just won't pay for it. As long as I'm not buying it, it's not that bad, because that's when you're supporting it. And then that's when you're actually like really causing it to happen. It's like, don't ever buy something on my account. Don't buy a steak on my account. But if I eat a piece of your steak, it was okay, right? But I moved beyond that. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to say. I mean, it's tough being a vegan, because it's like there's still a lot of misunderstanding about it, and there's people who don't understand what it's all about. It's just a diet, right? And like I've been through, it's hell. I honestly, veganism, to say it, I hate veganism, because I wish it didn't exist. I wish I didn't have to have this standpoint where I need to stand up for animal rights, where I need to be vocal, where I need to be active, because there's something that's going on that is so disturbing to me that it has just got me to the core that I need to act on it, or I'm gonna lose it, right? And so, like it's harsh to say, but I've certainly felt in the past where to me it's like pedophilia. Like if you have children, and just the idea of somebody taking advantage of a child, because a child is like an innocent thing, like they don't have that coming, they deserve better than that. And so for somebody to be preying on them and to actually get their kicks from it, to get enjoyment from taking advantage of a being which is in a position where it is unable to defend itself against you. So like that kind of anger, that frustration that parents would have towards a pedophile is exactly how I would feel towards people who eat meat, and that was a really difficult thing for me to overcome, because at the end of the day, it's a transition, like it's not something that just happens overnight, and it's going to take some time. Because it's so widespread, and it's like it's normalized, so it's like people don't even see it. I didn't even see it. because it's how I was brought up. So it's like, it doesn't help to point fingers at people and to be condescending and rude and hypocritical, or not, you know, to judge people. Like I said, judging others for not having come to the same conclusions that we have. So it's like, what a journey of my own, like, personal coming to terms with how to handle myself with this situation of being a vegan, but also not being judgmental, to not look at other people and like look down at them like what I'm doing is right and what they're doing is wrong, because it's been one hell of a journey for me. It's been tough. It's been lonely. I tell you, 10 years ago, it wasn't like it is today. It was, you know, now we got apps and vegan options at so many restaurants, and fully vegan restaurants. Like back in the day, it was so much more difficult, and it was like the science wasn't there. We didn't have all of these documentaries that we could call upon and studies and shown, and people hadn't done, you know, and it was the movement. It's taken a lot of time for the movement to be reaching a point of maturity. I'm not saying that it's anything new. It's something that's been going on forever. Like in like Veganuary, I would post certain things about, like, say, certain celebrities that are vegan, and it's like Albert Einstein, vegan; Voltaire, vegan; Socrates, vegan; Aristotle, vegan; Nikola Tesla, vegan. Like the greatest minds, people who look into stuff and examine and analyze and make decisions, all come to the exact same conclusion that that is unnecessary. That is, we don't need to be doing that. The greatest minds on the planet all agree, but you know, yeah, you know, it's funny too, because it's like, so now, like I said, I've gotten to a point where I'm a little more relaxed on it all. And even just like, I had some buddies go fishing on the weekend, and he's like, hey, look, we got this picture of this fish. And I was like, oh yeah. And then like, yeah, but so it's just catch and release. So it's just like, so, you know, it's tough not to get jarred by it, right? Because it's like, because they just don't see it. Where it's like, so it's like a fish is just swimming freely, then they hook it, they toy with it, drag it in, pull it out of its natural environment, right? Like, it lives in water, so all of a sudden it's in gravity, it's suffocating, and there's people sitting there laughing, drinking, and having a laugh, and like, we got a fish. And then they rip the thing out, take a picture, and then they dropped it. And then so they got a picture of when they dropped it. And then like, you know, just, can you imagine somebody dropping you on your head when you're like, they're in a water environment, all of a sudden they're in gravity, falling on your head. You just we're fighting for your life. You think you're gonna die. You just got a hook ripped out. You get slammed on the ground, picked up, people are laughing at you, and then they throw you back and do it again to the next unlucky fish that comes along. Unless that little fin on the back is missing, and then they can kill you. And you know, it's just like, ooh, it's like, boy, I don't even know where to start with that one. And I still don't. I'm learning how to speak my truth, or to express myself in a way where I just say, I don't want to see that, you know, please just try to recognize a little something about me and where I'm at. And, you know, that is not something that I want to see or that I enjoy hearing about. So, you know, and I got invited to an end of summer barbecue tomorrow, and it's at a friend's house, and of course they're all going to be eating all that kind of stuff. And I have a choice to go. I think I'm going to go to it just because, like I said, I'm a lot more peaceful about it now. I can see people doing it and not be judgmental because I've done so much work on my own ego. And that's really what it was, is like, because it's your ego. It's like, well, I have these beliefs about this, and then therefore if you're doing that, and then that's where the analyzing and you categorize and judgments and labels and all that kind of stuff. And it's where the struggling came in. But I'm gonna go and play it by ear, right? I mean, they say it's easy to meditate on top of a mountain. Well, that's a real test of character too, to see things that are very challenging issues in life and to handle it like with maturity, so that you can still have social interactions. You can still see people, and it doesn't you don't get bent out of shape. So I see somebody eating a steak or something like that, and it doesn't bring me to a point where I'm affected in a negative way, where I get sad, where I get judgmental and that kind of stuff. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. I certainly learned a lesson about protein. I mean, you do need to get protein from somewhere. Because the joke is like, vegans, where do you get your protein from? The answer is everywhere. But if you're going to have a serious, if you're going to be an athletic, you do need to supplement protein. But you need to supplement if you're not vegan anyways, if you're going to build muscle and stuff like that. So you need to compensate for the exercise that you're doing so that your body has things to build with. And I tried doing intermittent fasting and being a fruitarian and being a yogi and practicing calisthenics, and it did not work. I learned that lesson there, and so there is some legitimacy to the whole thing about you do need to eat a balanced diet. You do need to eat protein. You need to get it from somewhere. And but I mean, like, without all of that rigorous exercise, I was fine just eating fruit. I'm 42 years old, and I think I'm doing all right. I'm pretty healthy. I have no health issues at all. Back is great, strong. Eyesight 20/20, don't need glasses. Hearing's great, sense of smell, sleep well. I know that stuff's not about veganism, but I can't say that I'm super healthy because I don't eat meat, but I mean, there is science about all that kind of stuff. I don't know. But yeah, it's just saying it's been one hell of a journey. And it's not even over. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just barely getting started, because it's not over. There are animals in cages. There are animals who are not being respected, that they can't raise their families and stuff like that. And until that's over, I can't see myself sitting back and relaxing and just enjoying life and letting somebody else take care of it. It's just not my energy to give up on anyone, especially if I know that they're suffering and that they don't deserve it and that they're innocent. I don't know who does deserve to suffer or who's got it coming, but I don't think anybody really. But yeah, I don't know how many years it'll be, right? But I think it's getting better. So I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to share. I know I don't like talking about it. That's the big thing. I don't tell people that I'm vegan. But it's funny, like people that I know bring it up all the time, and it's just like I don't appreciate it. I say it's like I'm not a vegan. Like, I'm a fruitarian, meaning that like 80% of what I eat is classified as fruit, like a plant that grows a flower that creates a structure which contains seeds, fruit, beans, and all that kind of stuff are fruits. Tomatoes, fruits, avocados, fruits. Eat very little vegetables. The idea also is because you don't have to kill the plant. So like it's like kind of taking it one step further than just veganism. But like when you eat vegetables, those plants have to die for you to eat their bodies essentially. Whereas with fruit, there's a relationship, whereas a plant produces a fruit and then you eat it and the seeds and you poop them out and then it plants something else. So there's like there's a synergy, there's like a symbiotic kind of a relationship. There's an energy exchange between us and plants, and I just love that you don't have to hurt the plant at all. It's just like how it's supposed to be. Like in the Bible it says, and on the very first page it says, and God gave man every herb bearing seed and every tree which bears fruit whose seed is in it, and for you it shall be meat. M-E-E-T, or no, M-E-8, what is it? Anyway, no, M-E-T-E, and it just meant flesh, like the flesh of anything. It doesn't mean meat in the sense of the word that we use today. A lot of people mean animal flesh, but meat is just the meat of a watermelon or of a peach or of a plum. The flesh, it's not like that. So yeah, I mean, was there anything else? I don't know, this is a long video, but it's like this is my 10 years of being vegan, so I will ramble on for as long as that I want, because it's important for me. It's a milestone. It's been coming a while, and it's neat. I'm very proud of it that I've taken this standpoint. I mean, it's certainly a part of yoga as well. Like with the school that I'm going to be studying yoga with, you have to be a vegetarian and transition to vegan. And same thing, the yoga school that I'm already with, the meditation one, same thing. Like, because what they say is, so with yoga, if you're practicing asana, downward dogs and trees and side stretches, if you're practicing the stretches, they say practicing asana without practicing yama niyama is acrobatics. That's it. Because yoga means union with what? God meaning what? All that is. It means recognizing that we're all in this together, that we're all one. And so that's why, sayings like the mind in lakesh alakin, meaning you are another me, as I do unto you, I do unto myself. So it's like it's a very profound, deep spiritual thing, and hence like yoga, it's a practice. It's not just, I did some yoga. It's like, you're not an electrician because you changed a light bulb, right? There's depth to it. You're not a mechanic because you put some new windshield wipers on, you changed a couple of fuses, maybe you swapped out a flat tire or something like that. You're not that thing. You're not a Christian because you go to church on Sunday, and then you're bumping lines at the strippers on Monday, or like you're just living a buck wild, and like you don't believe in God and Jesus and stuff like that. It's like no, that's what it's all about. It's not about the show. It's not and so like with yoga, yeah, if you're not, I know it's a bit of a harsh standpoint too, but I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm very open about it. I say it all the time. Yeah, practicing asana without an understanding of yama, niyama, and so that's like observances, things that you should do and things that you shouldn't do, kind of like a way of life, because it's not just stretching and whatnot. So practicing asana without a knowledge of yama niyama is aerobics or acrobatics. Nothing. It's not yoga. Because yoga is about unity. It's about developing a first-hand personal relationship with an element of our experience that is vast. So being able to shift your awareness into an omnipresent state of awareness, to be able to communicate in that way with that element of existence, with, not going to say the word God anyways, but so in yoga, one of those things in yama niyama is ahimsa. So non-violence, not causing suffering, no harming. It's a part of it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm very reserved with that. I would certainly never say that to somebody who is practicing asana. That is something, it's like with veganism, I would only ever talk about veganism to another vegan. I mean, if you're watching this video, that's on you. I didn't, you click on my videos, you're asking. I'm not telling. I don't tell people I'm vegan. I don't throw it in their face. I don't any of that kind of stuff at all. And the same thing with the yoga thing. You never go and tell people, oh, well, you're not a yogi because you eat meat. That's what a horrible thing to then treat them like an animal, right? To treat them like a lesser. It's just like, that is not the philosophy at all. It's about love. It's about loving each other. It's about standing up for each other. It's about discipline. It's about morals. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So super important, I think, that little thing, that you don't do that, because you don't want to be one of those. I would say it doesn't help anything to give that kind of negative energy to the movement. It's like, it's not helping. That is not helping at all. It is a movement that is born of love for other animals, seeing all animals as equals. Animal rights means animals should be left alone to raise their families however they see fit. Yeah, so I don't know. They say be the change that you want to see in the world. But it's like, you are the change. So it's like, I don't want to get into spiritual stuff and like talking about multi-dimensional things, but like, if you want to see a change in the world, just to put it plainly, it's like, the best way that I'm aware is through action. You have to do something, so you take action. If you don't want to live in a world that's polluted, pick up garbage that's lying around. If you don't want to live in a world where there's people, or where there's terrible things that are going on, I don't know, find a way to do something about it. Find a way to, like, this is my little way, by just making videos. And I don't know who watches these things. Like, when I made my YouTube video before, or no, my channel, I made videos for like a year until I went traveling, and then I just needed my own private time. But like during that period of time, it all led up to making a video about veganism, and honestly that's what it was always all about, because it's like it was just eating at me. And then once I had made that video about veganism, I like signed up to a bunch of like Facebook groups and stuff like that, and I posted it on all those groups and stuff like that. I don't know, the video did not do well, not like as good as like my the best video is it's about gluten sensitivity, because I dealt with celiac disease and cured myself from it through a variety of things, right? But yeah, I tell you, like that veganism video, that's what it was all about for me. Man. Yeah, it's been a long journey, 10 years, and I can only assume that it's gonna get better because of how far that I've come, my own maturity, way of handling myself in regards to the subject, in regards to other people. Yeah, I think it's good. So it's something that I knew I was going to make this video here for a couple days. And it's something that I like because I love animals. I really do. I mean, like, I know I said I don't think people should own dogs and cats, and it's like because I love them. And the scenario you shouldn't have to mutilate an animal's genitals so that they'll behave in a way that conforms to your lifestyle. I love animals. That's why I don't try to own one or control one, or I have lonely times where it's like, yeah, it'd be great to have a cat or a dog, but it's like I'm not going to put my loneliness on this other animal. I would have an animal if it was free, as long as it could come and go as it wanted, and I didn't have to kill other animals to keep it alive, and it chose to be a companion of mine. That would be the best in the world. Yeah, if that ever happens in life, and I'm sure it's possible. I know that it is, to develop bonds with animals in that way. You hear about people who like rescue animals and things like that, and then they develop this bond, and yeah. But it was something like I like when, like, like, I don't kill flies. I would not kill a fly because, like, I feel for them. They're not alive. They're not alive for a very long time on this earth. They have a very limited existence, and they're like zooming around, and I can feel them. Like, and it's like, and then they come in to like a house or a car or something like that, and they get stuck. And to me, I don't know if it's just my imagination or my intuition, but it's just like, I feel like I speak a bit of animal, and they're like, that's what they say. It's like, we get stuck, so let them out. They don't want to be stuck in a house or in a, behind a screen, behind a piece of glass, like they're just, they go wherever there's a food source, or, different places, I guess. You know, but it's funny, like if you try to wrap your mind around this concept of animal mind and how they express themselves, how they talk and stuff like that. It's like with flies, it's like we get stuck. And it's like, it is so true. You know, and like when I put myself in their shoes, I feel good about being able to relate to them in that way. Or like how, like say with squirrels and stuff like that, it's like, you know, when they're doing their thing and I try to get into their frame of mind, it's like, for them, it's like, it's about it's like, it's better when you like have open spaces, so it's easier for them to see. And then like there's like to see, and then there's to find, and then there's to hide. And like just more basic ways of expressing and communicating and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. Love animals so much. Kitties and puppy dogs. Yeah. I think that's probably good. That's why I write about stuff, is because then you know you can just get it all out and then organize it, and it's a lot easier to articulate speech about, you know, a fairly complex subject when it happens over time. But you know, this video is over an hour now, and that's kind of how long that I figured it would be, just because I wanted to express myself. I mean, there's a lot of things that I said in this video that I don't say to people, right? Just because they're kind of harsh. But so is, you know, like if you're a vegan, so is locking up animals, so is killing, so is child abduction, so is, you know, treating animals poorly, so is, you know, all that's harsh. Yeah, you know, like there's a thing that I say sometimes, it's like, just like with people, interactions with people, it's like, you know, if you can behave in like a way that's like not cool, if you can be obnoxious and rude, I can point it out. I mean, you know, you can't say that it's not okay to speak your truth, you know, like this is such a touchy subject, because it, like, you know, it's like families, they don't understand, you know, your grandma, you know, people don't understand. I remember when I was first vegan and my dad would like put meat in my food and then be like, "Oh, yeah, you like that?" He's like, "Well, I cut up bacon and put it in there just to see if you'd notice." You know, like people, they just, and they treat it like it's a joke too. I've had it out with a friend before. It's just like, "Oh yeah," they're just like, "Oh, so it's like, oh, you can't eat this or you can't eat that." It's like, no, it's not that I can't, it's that I choose not to. Like, you know, people who have like university degrees, you can build an airplane, but you can't understand this concept of not wanting to contribute to suffering if it's completely unnecessary. I mean, and generally creating a lot of suffering isn't necessary. So I don't seem to, yeah, anyways. I mean, yeah. But you know, we will get through this, and I think it'll just get to the point where it's not cool anymore. When I look at how things have changed in the last 20 years, like I remember when I went to school, how racist it was. Now, I tell you, like people who are racist have to be very careful about the things that they say because of social media and stuff like that. And people don't take it lightly at all. Racist, sexist, homophobic, like you make the wrong comment about something and you are blacklisted or like canceled, and just like, people take it very seriously these days. So we will get there. Yeah. And I will do my part. Yeah, until every cage is empty.